Guys, today we're going to be doing our breakdown of Bungie's developer live stream from yesterday. Now, interestingly enough, they didn't just show us Act 2 of Heresy, they also revealed some details about Act 3, which was probably the most hyped portion of the stream. And keep in mind, guys, Act 2, which starts next week, is only going to last for about 3 weeks. So we're going to be in Act 3 a lot sooner than what you think. I know you're probably wondering, Cross, if we're going to be going into Act 3 this fast, what exactly are we going to be doing until Frontiers? It's a good question. Honestly, I have no idea. With that being said, though, let's begin breaking down yesterday's live stream. Now, before we continue the video, we would like to take a moment to raise awareness for a service that we on the team use every day. Today, we have partnered with Traveler's Chosen Checkpoint Bots. That's right, the Checkpoint Bot. Fellas, if you're ever wanting to farm a particular boss, easily collect spools from raid chests, maximize XP gains, or even test a new weapon on the Witness, you can easily join up to one of these several bots that are kept online essentially 24/7. And don't worry, this is completely safe, as even Bungie themselves has recognized the value that Checkpoint Bot brings to the community. Now, all you have to do to actually join up on one of these is visit one of the Twitch channels pictured on your screen. You enter the queue, and then a bot will invite you to join in-game, and they will then pull you to your desired encounter. And since you join from orbits, you don't even have to wipe, guys. And the best part of all of this is that this service is completely free, and it works well for PC players and for console players. So if you're looking to get in on an encounter or even get a chest, check it out, fellas. Big shout out to Luckstruck9 and the Traveler's Chosen team for providing such a great service to the Destiny 2 community. Now, first up, the stream was hosted as always by Andy. This is our senior social media manager, who is also joined by Nico Stevens, the narrative architect, Quinn, who is a senior activity designer, and of course, DMG, our global community lead. Additionally, throughout the live stream, though, more developers were trading in and out, each going over everything that they've been working on. Now, Nico gives us a brief recap of where we're at in Heresy. Not going to spoil anything for you guys, but I'm pretty sure most of you are already caught up. Then they dove into the new activity called Court of Blades. Quinn then goes on to talk about how bringing back the Dreadnoughts, they wanted to pay homage to the fan favorite mode from Destiny 1, that being Court of Oryx, but with a twist. They mentioned that a lot of the activities here recently have been long for, and that this particular activity is a shorter one where folks can just slay out and have fun. And after watching some of the gameplay, you can see here, guys, that this is like a boss rush mode with 2 bosses per phase. There's also different challenges in the form of augments that are like these roguelike features to make the runs feel unique and challenging. And this activity is supposed to take somewhere around 10 minutes versus like the 30 to 45 commitment there to the Nether activity. Now, this is not the first boss rush mode we've been given. Pantheon is kind of like that. This won't be on that level. No raid mechanics, nothing crazy like that. It's purely just getting in there, doing some light mechanics, and then just shredding down bosses. Now, in between each one of these boss encounters, you'll notice the activity pauses, and this is where you go to get your upgrades to then prepare for the next phase. Now, before entering the activity and in between phases, this is where you can see your augments that will show up during the encounter, which as it progresses, these augments do stack, meaning you can have multiple augments happening at once. You've got Banish, which reads defeat casters quickly to prevent banishment or fight your way back to reality. Another was Sharpen, confront immune blade bearers to obtain swords that strip a challenger's protection. Bulwark, which states that destroy small blights to reveal a protector whose taken essence can damage the main blights. You've got Swarm, which states to defend against swarming foes. Descend, which requires you to damage falling blights before they descend or suffer consequences. And even a hazard called Gaze of the Deep, which sets to avoid the gaze of that which spreads suffocating terror. Now, they mentioned these are concepts borrowed from Onslaughts. Now, Quinn explained, though, that they are a little different here as they provide challenges that players may be able to overcome in other ways, which we actually see during the gameplay. As sometimes they would actually do what the augment asks, and then other times, looks like they just brute force the boss and just cleared it in time. Now, this activity will not see the health scaling that we saw in the Nether activity, meaning it's just like the regular game, guys. No increased health. You will have health regeneration here. The idea of this activity is to be less stressful, more fun. However, the difficulty does escalate after every 2 challenges. So essentially after every phase. Now, as mentioned, between phases, there will be armaments that can be purchased that will allow you to combat these augment challenges. Now, in order to purchase these armaments, you'll need rune tiers, which seems like they're going to be earned just by playing the activity, on top of defeating bosses and completing augments. Now, they went through the activity pretty fast, but it looks like you need to earn 5 runes to progress each tier. And there's a meter underneath the icon on the HUD as you collect those runes. runes. Now, a few of the armament upgrades shown off include Tier 3 Ascended Slayer, which states that weapons and abilities deal additional damage to bosses. You also got Tier 2 Hive Sword, which allows you to equip a sword relic to use in battle. A Tier 1 Ritual of Greed, which states that collect 3 pyramid shards without dying to receive a permanent increase in your energy regeneration rate. There's also another Tier 1 called Void Transmutation, where defeating combatants with void damage provides a chance to transform them into transmutation spheres. Straight up sounds like Ruinous Effigy. Then we have a Tier 2 Dark Slayer ammo generation, where defeating a challenging combatant creates a small shower of ammo bricks for all guardians. We also saw Tier 3 Vanguard turrets, which state that allies support turrets appear in all future encounters, and some of these ornaments may look similar to the upgrades we've experienced during the Nether itself. Some will be new, some are even taken from exotic perks. Bungie mentioned that the Sunbracer's exotic perk will be one of those. Now, during the stream after defeating the first 2 bosses, they had a Tier 2 stolen rune on their HUD, and then they purchased a Tier 2 upgrade, consuming all the runes. So there may be some strategy involved in terms of saving runes to then purchase better upgrades. Now, they also mentioned that these armaments rotate daily, so something to mix things up every time you come back. Now, during these upgrade phases, you also get an ammo crate that you can top off before heading to the next phase of the activity. They also mentioned that our vendor, the Shaping Slab, will have additional upgrades that can be purchased for the Court of Blades. These upgrades were just mentioned in passing, and they weren't actually shown during the stream. Now, we can see as the countdown timer reaches 0, the tech's final round takes its place, which ends the activity and then teleports the fire team back to the Court of Oryx to receive the rewards. Now, we're assuming the goal of this activity is to run through as many times as you can before the timer runs out. And we also see that once the fire team reach challengers defeated times 13, they would achieve platinum status with a text that pops up that says challengers capped reach. Again, we aren't too sure if 13 is the max number of challenges or not, or if it's just because the activity timer ended. 13 is a bit of a weird number for that to be the cap, but we'll see for sure next week. Now, if any of this is confusing, don't worry, we're gonna have a guide day 1 once Act 2 launches. Now, lore-wise, one of the arenas is called Remnant of Silver, which actually takes place on Aya, which we haven't seen since before Beyond Light. Nico explained that Aya is still trapped between worlds and is trapped in the Ascended Plane. Another arena we saw was the Hive Warship, which is taking place on the Dreadnoughts, and we also saw Rathmore Subterrane, which is taking place on Europa. Now, Court of Blades will be a match-made activity, but there's also going to be a higher difficulty, which is the Expert version. Now, both versions will be the main place to earn the new Act 2 weapons, and Expert exclusively will be how we can earn the Adept versions of the new weapons. Now, speaking of weapons, Associate Weapon Designer Morgan Dickens joined the stream to talk about 4 of the new weapons that we're going to be able to earn during Act 2. First, we have the Refusal of the Call. This is a Strand Glaive. This makes it our second top slot glaive and our first ever Strand Glaive. Now, the role they showed off had Discord and Sword Logic. Now, they also mentioned that it will come with tilting at windmills and melee momentum for our PvP players. We also have Animesis, which we're going to be doing a review on here shortly. This is a void lightweight bow, which can roll with things like repulsor brace and stabilizing rounds. Funny enough, some people are already getting this bow in the community, and after my time with the bow, I can tell you guys, this one is a solid choice. We'll talk about more about this bow in our review. Next, we have the Division. This is an arc heavy burst sidearm, which is one of my favorite archetypes in the game. It can roll with things like eddy currents and bolt shots. It also has sword logic. For some reason, in my opinion, one of the most consistent archetypes of sidearms inside of PvP. They also showed off Afterlight. This is a void fusion rifle, and the specific role they showed was actually this Adept shiny role, which had Grave Robber and Offhand Strike in column 3, and Swashbuckler and Destabilizing Rounds in column 4. Now, the weapon that was not shown off, but Morgan did mention, was the SMG. That one will be called Mirror Amaga. That's a Strand SMG, which has a very similar gun model to that of Recluse. Now, unrelated to our episode loot, DMG also mentioned that the new Rocket sidearm will be in the GM rotation next week. We thought Lotus Eater was going to be here today. Fortunately, it's not. That will be coming out next week, but it's a sidearm we're definitely looking forward to. Now, our exotic SMG, Barrow-Dyad, is also getting some more additions. Its Catalyst 1 for All, as well as Target Lock, will be coming to us, and I'm hoping Target Lock is going to be really juiced on this thing. Now, the other 2 Catalysts will be coming to us, but that will be in Act 3. We're also going to be able to get the new intrinsic on the weapon called Taken Ambition, which reads that Blight generated increases the longer this weapon remains on target. Blighted Seekers burrow into targets and explode. Straight up sounds like malfeasance, right? Now, moving on in the stream, the team went over 5 new artifact mods that will be coming to us next week. There's going to be a heavy focus on trace rifles. In column 1, we have Overload trace rifles, which is pretty straightforward. Column 2, though, we have Beam Medic. Kinetic, where Rapid Trace Rifle Final Blows heals you and nearby allies. Powerful Combatants increases the amount. Now in column 3, we have Elemental Siphon, which states that Rapid Final Blows with the kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup, which grants you super energy when they are collected. Column 4 is Harsh Refraction, which states that Trace Rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs matching their elemental type. Then finally in column 5, we have Limit Break. Casting a super while you are critically wounded or have an elemental buff matching your super element grants a period of increased super damage. Now the crazy thing about all of this is that Microcosm is going to work with all of these, even though it's a kinetic weapon. Matter of fact, it was pretty much stated that Microcosm is going to directly synergize, almost as if all of these artifact mods were made for it. And keep in mind, Microcosm, its trait, Paracausal Imbuement, states that final blows with the weapon grant super energy, and when your super expires, you gain bonus damage. So you can imagine double stacking this with all of these mods, including Limit Break. Trace Rifles next week are probably going to be cooking, Microcosm especially. Now, they briefly talked about what's going to be coming in Act 3 to our artifact mods. There's going to be a focus on rocket launchers, including a perk that lets you use them without needing to reload or spend ammo, which is kind of crazy because one of the things that balances rockets is their ammo economy. But they also said that the secondary theme for Act 3 will include Strand with a new way to access Woven Mail. Now, continuing on with our Act 3 talk, both the Nether and Court of Blades will be receiving refreshes with new bosses and new combatants. There's a new pressure event, which are those blights that you need to destroy within a time limit. And Quinn mentioned that there's a new, more devious version of that coming to the Nether. Now, also for Act 3, the feature activity is Return of the Sunless Cell Strike, but with a new boss. Now, in addition to everything that's coming in Act 2, we also have Guardian Games, which is launching next week. Now, Guardian Games has always been about Guardians against other Guardians, Hunters against Warlocks against Titans, and normally we just meet inside of PvP. However, Bungie also has a Boss Rush mode as an activity for us, which is fantastic for my PvE players who don't want to jump inside of PvP. Now, they did mention this is going to be more like Court of Blades, not quite Pantheon, but still pretty cool. I feel like we're already going to be in that mindset too. There wasn't any gameplay shown of this, but I love the idea of a team of Titans rightfully outslaying a team of Warlocks and a team of Hunters, as they should be. Now, in terms of rewards, we have a new armor set, which is a gladiator themed set, which can be purchased either with silver or by earning Bright Dust. There's also a class item that we're going to need to engage with for the event. And in terms of weapons, we're getting a new trace rifle, which is going to have overflow, triple tap, eddy current in column 3, rolling storm, jolting feedback, and detonator beam in column 4, which is fantastic for the artifact mods we're getting next week. We also have Hula Baloo returning to us, Taraxipus, and the Tynal. And for those that are interested in those roles, we'll have a video going out here in the next few days that's going to go over all the roles for the next set of Guardian Game weapons. Now, moving on in the stream, Bungie started talking about some of the Act 3 changes. They were joined by Nick Kinney and Rodney Thompson. Now, Act 3 is bringing us a new, limited time, free-to-play event called Rite of the Nine. Essentially, there are going to be 3 dungeons featured in this event: Prophecy, Spire of the Watcher, and Ghost of the Deep. Now, they mentioned that there's been a lot of positive reaction to the recent contest mode dungeons, so they wanted to see what it would be like to revisit these older dungeons with that level of challenge. At the same time, there's also a lot of players that haven't even experienced those dungeons yet, which is why they're free. And they wanted to provide an opportunity to not only experience it for the first time, but also access these dungeons in something they're calling Explore Mode. Now, this mode is essentially going to be full of tooltips, helping players learn the mechanics, learn where to go, which I think is fantastic. There's also an Eternity mode, which is aimed for like the middle tier players, and then an Ultimatum mode, which is for the top end players that want to sweat. Now, we actually got some complaints of this while we were watching this live. Some people were saying that, hey, people need to just learn how to do the dungeons themselves. Here's the thing, fellas. I'm okay with content in Destiny being hard, especially on the first day. Contest mode, day 1, 1000%, I want that to be sweaty. But then after that, we 100% need a way for new players to not only join those activities, but to just get some sort of tips while playing those activities to help them out. Yes, it is going to be a little hand-holdy, but some of these players, it's their first time doing a dungeon. And I think this is fantastic that Bungie is adding this into the game. Now, the social space for this event is going to be taking place in the 3rd Spire. My Trials of the 9 players, it's back, along with the Emissary, who, by the way, her and Jermaine used to be a thing. And I just find it kind of coincidental that she's back after Eris, you know, is no longer with us. Now, what's so crazy about this space is that out in the distance, you could see the Spire Tower from the Spire of the Watcher dungeon, which indicates that this is the featured raid for the week, which is so cool. I'm actually really curious to see what Ghosts and Prophecy are going to look like in this area. Now, again, the Emissary is going to be the vendor that we're going to be dealing with. She will be offering quests, bounties, rewards throughout the event. And then you'll notice behind the Emissary, we have 12 weapons that are floating. Now, these weapons are actually broken up in 4 weapons per dungeon, and they're laid out so that we can walk up to them and attune to these weapons. Very similar to like Into the Light and our Brave Arsenal. No lie, you'll probably notice that there's a lot of parallels between this event and the Into the Light updates. Now, in addition to the perk refreshes, these weapons all have a new paint job featuring that 9 aesthetic. There's also going to be a new origin trait, which is in addition to their normal dungeon origin traits. And let me just say, the new origin trait looks juicy. It's called Gravity Well, which reads that reloading this weapon automatically gathers nearby ammo. Now, on top of this, we're also going to be getting adept versions of these dungeon weapons, which is the first time ever. They will all have a new animated look to them on top of the double traits. Now, in terms of these difficulty options that we mentioned, they talked a lot on stream about the new Explorer mode. Nix even mentioned that they found people in the studio who had never played a dungeon before, and it was tuned, so by the end of their playtest series, these players went from not knowing anything to now becoming quite adept at those dungeons, which is exactly what we want for the Destiny player base. Now, this mode features various ways to help players. For instance, during the open encounter of Spire, when you go up to the circuit, in the middle, it will pop up on the screen in-game telling you pretty much exactly what to do. You'll locate the starting node for each wire and then shoot them in order with the attrition buff to activate them. Then when you defeat a Conduit Minotaur, you'll get another tooltip on the screen saying to defeat Conduit Minotaurs to drop pools of Arctrition. Step in the pools to gain the Arctrition buff, which allows wire node activation. Now, for traversal sections of dungeons, they actually have waypoint markers on the screen showing you the direction to go. They've also removed darkness phases for these traversal encounters and reduce revive timers, so there's no penalty for failure as you're learning. Now, there's also shepherding mechanics for traversal sections. For instance, if you're with someone who's really good at traversing, they can actually move ahead of you and then elevate these platforms to allow you to jump across, which is fantastic for my folks that suck at jump puzzles, myself included. Now, they also briefly touched on the Ultimatum Mode, which is the more difficult mode for players that are familiar to dungeons and are used to those high levels of play. This is going to be a power level equivalent to contest mode. So we're going to be facing tougher enemies. There's also going to be activity modifiers, for example, not swap, which means you can't switch exotics during the encounter, which is kind of crazy because I load out swap all the time. But these modes are going to be scored per encounter based on the amount of deaths that you have. So the less deaths you and your team have during the encounter, the better loot you will receive. And for those of us that want to farm the adept versions of these weapons, well, that is only acquirable in the Ultimatum mode. Now, in addition to our dungeon weapon drops, throughout this event, there's going to be 5 exclusive emblems, as well as an earnable weapon cosmetic, a new event exclusive title from completing challenges in Ultimatum mode. Now, to end the stream, they had one final thing to share. A sneak peek at a new limited PvP mode coming in Act 3 called Heavy Metal. It will now be the most competitive mode in all of Destiny. It's Briggs versus Tanks. Straight up, we got Titanfall right now. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is a fun activity. No, it's not going to be super sweaty, but I do love that Bungie's doing stuff like this. Kind of reminds me of like the old days of Griftball. Who knows? Maybe this may lead into like a big team battle mode at some point for Destiny. But that's it, guys. That is your stream breakdown. Again, the way I would look at this is we're definitely entering similar territory to what we entered last year with the Into the Light updates. If you remember correctly, Guardian Games launch, that kind of started the snowball. Then we went into the Light, and then we fully ramped up into Pantheon, and then boom, we had the annual expansion. Honestly, that 3-month time frame was probably the best time frame of Destiny that I have ever experienced. So I'm hoping that the 3 months that are going to be leading up to the launch of Frontiers, as we're speculating Frontiers will be dropping sometime in June or July, I'm hoping we're going to have a very similar experience to what we had in the Into the Light updates. Let me know in the comments below what you think, guys. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.